Welcome to the Pike County Report. I'm Brandon Roberts, alongside, as always, Judge Wayne T. Rutherford. And with us today is also Kerry Johnson from the Kentucky Division of Water, and he's here for a specific reason. Mr. Johnson, tell us a little bit about why you're here today.
The reason I'm here today is to speak about the revised flood insurance rate maps, the floodplain maps for Pike County. The process was begun in around 2009-2010 time frame. We did some pretty detailed mapping in order to create the new flood insurance rate maps for Pike County, or areas of Pike County. And we'll be holding an open house on December 18th for the general public to come in and discuss the maps.
And Judge, during your time, in not just in office but in Pike County, you've experienced some floods in your time. You believe wholeheartedly in the National Flood Insurance Program, don't you?
I want to thank Kerry Johnson for being here today. We're here today, and Pike TV is the greatest thing that's ever been put together for Pike County, to let our citizens of the county know what's going on. And that was our mission when county government, when we came up with this concept and ideal, is have an outlet so we can give people all the information about what's going on in government, but what's going on in different programs that affects them, especially affects their pocketbooks. We're here today for a very serious program because we're here today to save people money. Your flood program, and I know that Brandon, that I've had 21 federal declarations. That's where I, as county judge executive or county judge, have declared, and the governor declared, president declared in this county. All but one of those was from flooding. So we've had 20 from flooding. But during that time period, we have had unbelievable opportunities to work with FEMA. It has not been a good relationship with FEMA. I know when I came back into office in 2007, they owed Pike County $900,000 on 4 or 5 past floods. And I had to make a trip to Washington and Frankfurt and everywhere else trying to get the money, because, Kerry, when FEMA comes in, they want you to pay up front, and then they reimburse you. While they're here, they give you nothing in writing. They won't give you anything in writing. Then they leave town, you don't have nobody, and they scatter all over the United States. They've been here from Kansas, from the state of Washington, from Montana, from all over this country. They bring them in here. And then when they're gone, you have no way of getting a hold of them. But then this federal insurance program, so it goes back to the 77 flood. We got hit harder in the 77 flood than any in the history. The 37 flood, the 1908 flood, the 27 flood, the 37 flood, the 57 flood. That's how it went, right. The big one.
Absolutely.
And then the 77, the big one hit us. And then at that time, HUD was the federal agency who coordinated for flooding. There was no agency. 2 weeks after we got hit unbelievably here in this county from a devastating flood, Johnstown, Pennsylvania was hit with the flood who took more lives and more damage of any time in the history of the United States of America. So Congress held hearings. The county attorney and I went to Washington, testified of the poor job that HUD has done, because we had people on the Tug Fork in this county still living in tents 45 days after the election. Congressman Perkins was congressman at that time, and I saw the man lose it. He cried when he saw the plight of these people in this county that's not been taken care of by HUD people. They wouldn't even open up a place for them to sign up for anything in Belfry or Phelps. They didn't understand how large this county was. And I saw a congressman cry. I saw him grab the fellow named Hall from behind the desk and just shake him and say you can't treat our people this way. But then we continue to have, then FEMA comes in, and we testified, the county attorney and I in Washington. Herbie Deskins was county attorney. We testified of what happened in this county. Johnstown, Pennsylvania had the same story to tell the committees of both the House and Senate. It was joint committee of what had happened in Pennsylvania. We was part of FEMA being born by Congress, and then had to put up with the same thing that we had with HUD, of not understanding and not listening to the local people and not providing the needs. We have the most resilient people in this area. We have to open up. We did under HUD, and we have to under the FEMA guideline. We opened up shelters, but we have nobody goes to our shelters because we are such a close-knit communities in Central Appalachia. Our families take care of families. Our churches take care of their church members. We take care of each other. Do they use our shelters? Come in the daytime and eat and get coffee and something to drink and sandwiches. But they don't. We don't have anybody staying in them because that's not our makeup. We look out for each other, and thank God that we was able to do that, and that's our mentality of our people, and that's how we operate. But we have been through so much, and these people that we're talking to today have been through so much. I used to could walk the streets of Pikeville and look people in the eye and tell whether or not they had been in the flood and lost everything they had. I mean, it is absolutely devastating for a public official to have to govern at a time when you have this time of a disaster, but to not have agencies that come in. Now, then when HUD gave up and go over to FEMA, then that's where your federal insurance program come in. First thing I did after 77 flood is starting to, when in 79, when the flood insurance come out, is to get flood insurance in this county. And I can tell the people this, I lost an election over that. I lost an election because I had an opponent who said, the judge is trying to tell you where to put your dogs, your cats, your chickens, your cows, your horses, your mules. He's trying to take over your property by zoning. They called it zoning instead of flood insurance. And I lost the election because that was the key issue in the election, that I had zoned Pike County, because you don't zone rural counties in politics in America and get rid of it because they don't want their farmland zoned. Right. Well, but I'm going to get back to the subject we're on here today. The reason we're here today is the federal government has required the Commonwealth of Kentucky, which is your agency, which is and you can give your details on your agency.
Sure.
They've required you all to become part of this process. And we're glad because we think you all will do a better job for our people. But here's what we're here for today. If you don't go out and buy insurance, if you're in this area, and you're going to have areas that you've never been flooded before, and many of you don't know what we're talking about, a floodplain, because you don't live in the area where you've had water that backed up out of the rivers on the river flooding for all these years, and you have two that come from the sky, a downpour of rain in 2009 and 10. So the reason we're here today is to talk about where you all are going to have the community meeting in this county, and you're going to be at the meeting, and you're going to bring staff with you, and other agencies.
Yes, sir.
Will have people here today. But I'm going to let you tell what you're going to bring with you, how you're going to do it. But here's the key. If you don't buy your flood insurance now, he'll give you the date, now and a certain date in a few months, the cost of a premium for your insurance is going to triple or more than that. Now, we know it's going to be triple, maybe even higher than that. But if you can go out and buy it and purchase it, then you can save your money. And that's the purpose of being. The purpose of Pike TV is to give you the information. It's to provide educational and information of what's going on in the city and county government in this county. And the purpose of here is to let you all know through Pike TV of what you need to do in regard to your flood insurance in the future. Pike County government, we put in when the insurance went into effect. They hired a fellow, he's still with us, he's Jimmy Kaiser. I kept him when I came in office because I thought he'd done a great job. Jimmy Kaiser does a great job. He's floodplain manager in this county.
He's been a great resource
and
for us.
He assists people in getting their permits. That's through your agency. Mm-hmm. But the reason we're here today is the federal government requires, and we have to remap. Now counties mapped in '79. It was mapped again in '85. It was mapped again 10 years later in '85. 1998, some mapping done. 2008, some mapping done.
Right.
Now, 2013. Now, we would like to have the whole county mapped, but with no money in Washington, no money, you're only getting a portion of it. We're going to be back here for the other sections of this county, probably next year or when they can get funding.
Probably so.
We'll be back here saying, folks, listen to us. Your flood insurance is going to go up if you don't do this again. But we're talking about areas in this county, and I don't know when the proper time is, Brendan, but I think that we need to call out the names of these here, and also it'll be on the screen.
Well, you said something interesting, Judge. You said there's people that's never been flooded who are probably going to sit there and say, well, this couldn't be me. You know, I couldn't be in the floodplain. They could be in the floodplain.
They could be. Every stream has a floodplain, whether it's 200 feet wide or 2 feet wide. Every stream does have a floodplain.
Perry, before we forget it, this includes slides. People don't realize the flood insurance includes slides behind their home.
Mudslides.
Mudslides. I
mean,
folks,
which we
if
have
you're
a lot
not
of.
on if you're not in a area and you're sitting up on the hill, you think, I don't need flood insurance. Yes, you may need flood insurance because it's been heartbreaking for me as an official when people walked into my office and we send Doug Tackett out, Emergency Management Office, and he comes back with the pictures and a report, and I drove out there with him and saw people's houses sliding down off the hill.
And Judge,
flood insurance.
As you well know, of course, there doesn't have to be a flood. It could just be a night of heavy rain. You wake up the next day, there's roads blocked off with mudslides and things. So you don't even have to be during
Brendan,
flood.
you said that how we like the flood insurance program and support it, and I've given the reasons why we love that program and why we try to look out for our citizens as things come up like this occurring.
Right, and flood insurance covers losses from floods and mudslides and such, even when there isn't a presidentially declared disaster. So it is a good resource for folks that are at risk to recoup losses.
When FEMA had Katrina and they done such a poor job, Congress reacted by taking the streams away from them and getting it to the United States Department of Agriculture, NRCS.
Yes.
What was the NRCS?
Natural Resource
I always have to
Conservation.
ask Brandon. He always, on the tip of his tongue, calls their name out. But what a job these people do. They're not FEMA folks, and you all know that dealt with them at your home. They come in, they let a contract. They first bring engineers. They'll appraise it. Then they let contract. They have a list. It's an emergency, and it don't have to be a federally declared flood. We just spent $300,000 2 months ago, and people living on Mike's Bank will remember this. When we're about to lose our bridge and people about to lose their home because of the washout down there. You don't have to have a presidential declaration. They declare themselves under the new legislation. But these folks come in with their engineers, they appraise it, they have their list of contracts. This is an emergency. And they give their contracts locally if they have people here who are qualified that they have on their list.
Sure.
And it gives our people, and I know floods are bad, but thank God that we was able to get those contracts, and the truckers and the people in the industry as the coal business went down, they had got to work, and they got to save their equipment. And that's the reason a lot of them's got their excavators and all their trucks and everything today is because they participated. But United States Department of Agriculture and NRCS, they do the project, keep an inspector on site. When that project's in it, they sign off with a county. If it's a county, somebody signs off too. Then, Brandon, within 2 weeks, as you know, they get a check. They don't promise you pay up front. We don't pay up front with them. They pay within 2 weeks. Our office staff can tell you over there that they give you a check and people are paid and you move on. It's not like FEMA. So that's the way that it's done now. But I want you to go through your PowerPoint and
Sure.
I want you to explain. And I know that I've taken up some time, but I just feel that we must let these people know what they're facing with this change of the flood maps in this county required by the federal government, and then to look for the Commonwealth of Kentucky and Pike County to certainly be part of that, and we're glad we are, and we're glad we'll have you here today.
And Kerry, quickly before you get into that, what is there a specific happening that makes remapping necessary, or is there just a time frame you come in and remap, or does it have to follow a flood?
Most of it is actually based on risk. Pike County is one of the highest risk areas in the state of Kentucky, and
As we know.
And
We know
FEMA
that.
actually has an algorithm, and they work with the state of Kentucky to prioritize the areas of highest risk, so that we can keep refining the flood hazard maps with better data. And that was the intent with this process. So, I mean, the Kentucky Division of Water, when it comes to floodplain management, really serves two roles. There's a floodplain construction permitting requirement, which Jimmy has been a wonderful resource for all the folks in Pike County in aiding with the floodplain construction permits through the Division of Water. And that's a state requirement through KRS 151. But the Division of Water is also a partner with FEMA in doing the flood map revisions. So we are what's called a cooperating technical partner. Basically, FEMA grants the money to the Division of Water, and we manage the flood map updates out of Frankfurt instead of out of the regional office in
And
Atlanta.
I see you got a map there in front of you.
Right.
What are you looking at there?
Well, what I'm looking at here is the areas where, as Judge Rutherford had mentioned before, we didn't have enough funding because Pike County is such a large county to remap the entire county. So some areas around Pikeville and Coal Run Village were prioritized, and then also areas along Tug Fork were prioritized in this 2009 study. It kicked off in 2009. It does take a few years to get the studies done, but so basically the kind of the northeastern part of the county and then the western part of the county around Pikeville were the areas that were updated with this map update. 54 new map panels were created as part of this study. We sent preliminary maps to Jimmy and the executives in Pike County for their review on January 9th of 2012. And that kicked off a very involved due process phase where we had public meetings with the community officials about the maps and explain the process to get the maps to adoption. The date that these maps are anticipated to go effective, basically when they'll be done, is April 16th of 2013. So that is the magic date for flood insurance if people are newly identified in a floodplain area. If they can get their flood insurance 30 days before that April 16th date, they'll be granted 30 days prior. There is a 30-day waiting period on flood insurance policies.
I got a Facebook message last night because this is all over Facebook. This floodplain, the remapping thing, and someone said if they buy their insurance now, then in April, when the new maps go into effect, will the rate go up?
The rate should go up. They'll be grandfathered into the new map.
That's the purpose of
it. Right.
I'm glad you said that because that's what I told them.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. In the newly identified floodplain, which there are some, the floodplain mapping for this update on the 54 new map panels identified floodplains on all the streams that drain 1 square mile or more. And that actually complies with the floodplain construction permit requirement through KRS 151.
So at this meeting, on this December 18th meeting, they can residents can come in and look at these panels, right?
Absolutely. We're going to bring paper maps, and we'll also bring digital data. And the county has shared information with us in regards to all the building information, so we can take the digital floodplain data that we have and intersect it with the local building data from Pike County and pinpoint structures immediately with the digital data and be able to tell folks almost instantaneously whether they're affected by the new maps.
People in the county don't realize we have pictometry here. We're one of the 4 counties, I think, in Kentucky that has pictometry. We have satellite capability.
Only rural county, I believe.
I think Muhlenberg County has it.
Yeah, probably.
But they have it, don't
They do, yes, sir.
And probably more than 4 since I've probably a few more.
I think there's been a few throughout the
There've been
state.
probably a few in the last 2 or 3 years.
The oblique angles, it's a handy tool.
We have pictometry, and you can come into Doug Tackett's office. And matter of fact, not only do we use it during the flood, we have a contract, and we'll probably get flyover again, and it broke down in panels, and they fly the county when the leaves are off. Then when we have a disaster under our contract, they come back in and fly it within 72 hours. Then when FEMA comes in, we just provide them their maps and have everything ready for them. And we surprised them when they came in last time and what we gave them when they had their opening meeting with us. They need to give us anything. We hand them everything. We hand them because of the technology that we have through our county government. And we have more technology in Pike County government. We have a program in Pike County government that is being sold throughout the country now that was piloted here in Pike County in Doug Tackett, our office here, in regard to flood. And Brandon, you remember the map that we provided them with the notebook.
We get a phone call.
They get a phone call.
And it pinpoints where the phone call come from on the map.
Okay.
And then you go up to satellite, you get a picture out there before and after, and you hand it to them.
And 3 minutes later, you got...
Now, where FEMA used to come into a county like this and take them 3 weeks.
Because they had to drive around the county.
When you used to have the river floods.
Right.
No more. They come in, we got it. We can give an assessment. We can give assessment to Frankfurt so they can go to the president. We have to wait on some of the other counties, but we're the first one always to get that in. So we are blessed in this county to have that type of technology and to have a program that gets the job done.
It does.
But it's not what we do. It's these people out there. They amaze me. I mean, they've been through so much, had so many heartaches, and lost so many personal pictures that can never be replaced, and things in their homes. And they come right back. That's the kind of people we are. We don't stay down. We fight back, and that's because we're mountain people. We have to fight back. I say all the time, we're the tail that wags the dog.
My dad's lost everything he's had in floods twice. So,
right. Well, and one of the things that I wanted to mention is Pike County actually ranks second, right behind Jefferson County, Louisville, in the number of flood insurance policies. So there are lots of people in Pike County that do have flood insurance right now.
Well, as I said, I lost the election over it and been back.
But your citizens are,
and we all have supported this very, very great program of this federal flood insurance.
Now, we came into Pike County, I'm reading here, came into the NFIP program in '79. Was that because of the '77 flood?
I believe that was the result of the '77 flood. Yeah, the '77 flood is the flood of record in this part of the state. A huge flood that affected, many stream systems in eastern Kentucky, and it's the flood of record for most of the, Leviza Fork, Tug Fork, and a lot of the other streams in eastern Kentucky.
The '63 flood was about equal to '77, really.
Right. And didn't you say it was one in the late '50s too?
Oh, we had them on the 20 years.
Oh, did you?
20-year floods.
Right.
They hit, but then they really hit us hard.
Right. But for a lot of the work that the Army Corps of Engineers does, they use the '77 flood as the flood of record in order to establish how they set up their projects.
And a lot of people don't understand it. Well, these floods that we have, river floods, is where they have the rain in Virginia. McCall River and those other tributaries that run down the Russell Fork and the Leviza Fork of the Big Sandy River and the Tug out of West Virginia and Virginia. And that's where we get our river flooding from. We have had some local flooding in this area here in Pike County, local flooding. But where we get the major from is the downpour, like the McClure River up in Virginia got 8 inches, 8 point something of rain in 2 days. That's what hit us in '77. I mean, it about washed us all.
Right.
Hey, Kerry, could you explain the one-on-one the impact these maps have on specific property?
Well, yeah. The impact is if you're in a special flood hazard area, which is the identified area on the flood insurance rate maps of the 100-year floodplain, and you have a federally backed mortgage, one of the provisions of that federally backed mortgage is that you have to carry flood insurance.
You're required.
So that is a federal requirement that in an identified special flood hazard area, if you have a federally backed mortgage, you have to have the flood insurance. There's a federal requirement.
Well, I got a phone call yesterday from someone who said, are you all ready for the phone calls you're going to get over all this? Because the word's already out there that this is something the county's doing, and I think it's very important that people understand that this is the action of the federal government, this remapping.
Well, right. I mean, the funding came through the federal government, and as I mentioned before, the county's prioritized because of the high flood risk here. And one of the things that we did do as part of this study was we collected really good ground surface information, topographic data. In the past, a lot of the flood hazard mapping was done on USGS quad mapping, a 20 or a 40-foot contour. We collected new topography for these maps using it's a system called LIDAR. It stands for light detection and ranging, and the topographic data has an equivalent of 2 feet, a 2-foot contour instead of a 20 or 40-foot contour if you're familiar with the USGS quad sheet. So the description of the ground used for these floodplain maps is much better than any mapping that was used in the past.
That's interesting.
Let's talk about the flood walls of
Sure.
South Williamson, and this covers the city of Pikeville, folks, also. But let's talk about the flood wall at city of Pikeville first. We're aware of the Corps. They built the flood walls.
Right.
They built them.
In response to the 77
Then they turned
floods.
around a year later and run from it, and turn around and believe it or not, the flood wall in the city and the Pikeville, they said, no, you have to make changes. Well, the city manager and the mayor and commission and myself and the physical court, we was lost. It would take hundreds of thousands of dollars to do what the Corps wanted to do, and they're the ones that designed these flood walls. And then turns them over to us and come back 2 years later and said you have to bring them up to what our people would say, up to snuff. Here's what you got to do. Well, we had a meeting. You all came in. Mm-hmm. You remember.
Right. Yes, sir.
You came in our conference room with the city and the county, with the county and city engineers. And from that meeting, we decided that Mr. Sykes from Summit Engineers we got a hold of Hal Rogers, our congressman, and said, Congressman, the Corps has laid it on us again, not understanding, and said, we designed these, our engineer approved them, it was designed, we approved them, they was built, now they're saying, we're not going to license them again. So it'd be just like they're not even existing. So we get a hold of the congressman, and he says, come up to Washington, and we will see if we can take care of this. We ended up getting funding. You can go ahead and
sure.
take over.
Well, I'm happy to say that through Summit Engineering and the work that you did on the flood walls,
and the city of Pikeville,
and the city of Pikeville, of course, is that the flood walls have been certified. And they are accredited, and they do show protection on the flood insurance rate maps.
So you can understand why I'm gray-headed.
Sure, absolutely.
When you deal with the Corps of Engineers, and you have to deal with FEMA.
Sure.
And then represent these people out there that have been hurt so many times by these natural disasters.
Right. But as far as the flood walls are concerned, and the maps, they show protection, which, as you know, for a period of time, there was some iffiness as to whether these maps were going to be able to show protection behind the flood walls, but they are, because the flood walls have been certified and accredited by FEMA, and all is well, and the new maps reflect that.
Congressman Rogers says they can't do that to you all. I said, well, there it is in black and white. Go right ahead. The Appalachian Regional Hospital, we put a levee behind that hospital years ago, Pike County government with the cooperation of everybody else. And believe it or not, the next year, Brandon, the ARH Hospital at South Williamson, the flood came, and it like 2.5 inches of coming over that levee. So we had a hospital which could stay in operation over in that section of the county because of the planning and forethought that was put into protecting that facility with a earth-type levee. We still maintain that levee, as you know.
Right.
We still get inspections, and we still have county crews that works on it. Same as we do, the same as the city does the flood wall here, and the same as we do the flood wall at South Williamson. We maintain that, but we're just now complying with some more federal regulation that on the sandbags building, we've had the awfulest time of finally getting it constructed through county government, which we have to do with inside the wall because of the lack of space to put the building. We've had, and we couldn't get a waiver from them. And we said, please understand, you're in a mountainous area. You're in a closed-in area. The wall's there. Here it is. Here's where it can go and there and nowhere else. That's all if you want it inside the gate. Finally, after a year, we got a waiver, and the county's in the process of building the building on the South Williamson thing for the sandbagging.
Hey, Kerry, will the people who are already under the umbrella of the National Flood Insurance Program be affected at all by this?
Can you elaborate on the umbrella?
Well, let's say someone got into the they were flooded in 2009 or 2010, and then so they become part of the National Flood Insurance Program. Although they're already in a floodplain, obviously, will the new the remapping affect their involvement in it?
I mean, they would really only be effective if they're newly identified in a floodplain on these maps. You know, the county has quite a few floodplains already identified, and a lot of folks that do have flood insurance already. Those folks that already have flood insurance really shouldn't be affected by the new mapping unless the new mapping has removed them from the floodplain. And one of the things that I was able to do with some of the information that the county shared with me is that there's going to be a little over 660 structures based on a rough analysis removed from the floodplain on the new maps. Now, on the converse, it looks like there's going to be about 640 new structures identified in the floodplain.
So there's 20.
So there's a net decrease of about 25 in the county.
Which I'll commend our office staff and Mr. Kaiser for the job they've done. That means that the success that they've had of keeping people out of the floodplain and getting people out of the floodplain.
Absolutely.
And the program that we worked for so hard after the 77 flood, and that would be the relocation program on the Tug Fork.
Right.
Now, you're aware that program is scheduled over here with no federal money now. It's not being done, but that's to be done right on down the Big Sandy River.
And that's a Section 202?
And it's already there and already done a lot of preliminary work.
Right.
But there's no money to fund it.
Right. And in fact, I mean, I'm glad you mentioned that because we were actually able to use some of the information that the Corps compiled as far as engineering data that they put together to put on these maps because it was better engineering data than what was on the maps
Certainly
previous.
It was, yes.
So, you know, the Corps does some really good things as far as engineering is concerned and everything.
Corps of Engineers, they do great work.
Sure.
Our experience with them is not the way they normally operate, I can tell you that.
Right. But, you know, as far as they are the Corps of Engineers.
I
so
have
whenever
great respect for the Corps of Engineers, and looks like they've done a commendable job down in Louisiana and on Mississippi from this last
with the levees.
Absolutely, with the levees and everything. Yeah,
I was down there for the Final Four. I went to look.
And that agency has been through so much.
They have been through a lot, and a lot of changes, at least through over my 10 years career at the Division of Water. So the Corps has undergone some pretty serious changes that you know, we don't deal with them directly but we deal with them very closely because, you know, they have a flood management program. The Division of Water has a flood management program, and of course FEMA does as well. So we try to work as a Division of Water with FEMA, the Corps of Engineers, the NRCS through the Emergency Watershed Protection Program as much as we can, because, you know, if we can combine resources, hopefully we can get a lot more done with those combined resources versus just relying on one agency or a couple agencies to try to get things done.
One of the goals of the NFIP I'm looking at here says it's to encourage development away from flood-prone areas.
Right.
And you mentioned the emergency watershed protection, you know, as moving people out of the floodplain.
Sure, absolutely.
We're doing those, what, Judge? A couple of weeks. It seems like almost a couple of weeks right now. It's been a slow process, but it seems like at least a couple of times a week people are coming in to accept their offer and get out of the floodplain. So that, at least that,
we're blessed, Brandon. As Brandon was telling you, we've been able to get $7 million plus in grants for the first time. We've been telling anybody that listens to us, you come in, we're flood prone, as you said.
Sure.
They're more than any other county in the Commonwealth. They come in and pay people to go right back in the floodplain. They give them, you know, if it's 29,000 or whatever their threshold is, clean up, go back in. We're saying, please, folks, help understand, get these people out of the floodplain for the first time. We've got both sources that Brandon told you about, NRCS and FEMA. We have two separate programs underway right now, moving people out of the floodplain. That program is going to have to go on for many years.
Sure.
Before it gets the people, because of our county is so large, and we have so many streams in the county, to get them out of the floodplain. But
well, I think that's a feather in the cap for you, because the county can contribute good information to FEMA and NRCS for those programs, so that the benefit cost ratio analyses that are required to determine whether, you know, if there's a buyout that takes place, there has to be a long-term benefit. In order to calculate that benefit versus cost ratio, you have to have good information, and 9 times out of 10 that information comes from the local community. So, you know, and you guys doing some of the things that you're doing, collecting good building information and working together across county lines, I think that's a real feather in your hat, because you are qualified for some of these federal funds to mitigate these properties that repetitively flood. So,
well, you know, when you're right, it just makes sense. You know, FEMA gives you money, you move back in, you flood, FEMA gives you money. If you just relocate them,
right,
that's a one-time cost.
Absolutely.
I've testified in Washington and Congress 3 times in regard to relocate people out of the floodplain. Right. And I know the people out there, they love their home, but gosh, some people out there sitting here today has been through this about 3 or 4 times. I mean, it is, how in the world? I don't see how in the world they do it.
Well, at a point it becomes unsustainable, really, for a community to do that.
They're ready to say, what I do.
Right.
Well, that is an option that they have now, and we're going to continue to file for grants with both agencies, and going to continue to work with our federal delegation in Washington and the governor's office to get more money for relocating people out of the floodplain.
You know, my dad lives in Belfry, and he was hit hard in particularly '09, and you can walk up what we call the back alley of Belfry along Pond Creek, and it's just empty house after empty house. I mean, people just never came back.
Right.
They didn't want to deal with it again.
Right.
Some of them came back and raised their house. Our friend Frank Kaziz, you know, he's back in the same spot, but his house is raised. But there's empty houses. They're still, you know, they're still flooded. I mean, you can still see the water.
Right, the water lines. Right. Well, and that's another thing is, you know, one of our hopes is that, you know, a lot of the information that we're compiling for these flood map updates, and then, you know, as we evolve over the next couple of years into FEMA's new program called Risk Map, that we can provide that information, couple it with the information that the communities have compiled here in Pike County, and qualify for even more federal money to, get those properties out of harm's way. That's the idea, is to reduce the risk in the community by getting people out of harm's way. Of course, it's a personal decision. They have to be amenable to that decision.
It is a personal decision.
Right. But and we don't want to force anyone to move if they don't want to. But if it makes sense and if the person wants to, what one of our charges at the Division of Water and dealing with the local communities is to provide information to folks so that they can qualify for those funds.
It's like Judge said, people love their homes. I have a lot of friends who live in the house their grandfather literally built with his bare hands.
Sure.
Then their parents lived in it. Now they live in it. Now they have kids, and their kids will want to live in it. They don't want to leave.
I know you're going to show this on the screen, but I think really that we need to run through this and let people know that they need to attend this meeting. Island Creek, both forks, Compton Branch and Raccoon Branch, Hurricane Creek to the county line, Turkey Creek, South Williamson, Forest Hills, Mullen Fork, now that's Turney, Pinson Fork, Coburn Holler, Ball Fork, Runyon's Branch, all of Pond Creek past Ball Fork, Dawes Branch on Blackberry, Nares Branch at Hardy, Mud Lick at Hardy, Blackberry Fork at Hardy, Hatfield Branch, Toller Road, Peter Branch, Peter Fork Road, right fork of Blackberry, left fork of Blackberry, Rock House Branch or right fork of Blackberry, Old House Branch of left fork of Blackberry, Little Bruce Springs, Barnshee Creek, right fork of Peter Creek, Poplar Creek, branch off of Tug Fork, Woodman Road, Turkey Creek to stop over Knox Creek, Lower Elk, Andy Trent off Tug Fork, east of Knox Creek, Pounding Mill. Ford's Branch, Upper Johns Creek, Gabriel, Callaway Branch, right fork of Peter Creek, Road Fork, right fork of Peter Creek, Beach Creek, left fork of Peter Creek, Smith Fork, Pawpaw, Hurricane Creek off Knox Creek, Camp Creek, and Middle Elk. And I will say that in the 210 flood, we'll be back here probably another year from now, sitting here, we're doing the same thing we're doing today. Say, folks, you all get ready because your flood insurance in those areas in the 2010 flood.
Also, if anyone wants to call the office, if they thought they might have heard their area on there, or if they just tuned in and caught half of it, if they didn't see it if it went off the screen too quick, call the office. The list is in there, and we can read it to you, or you can ask about your area, and we'll tell you.
They can call our office or 432-6204, which is Jimmy Kaiser, floodplain manager.
Yeah. And it'll be on Facebook.
And we'll put it on our Facebook. We, at the state Division Water Program, has a Facebook and a Twitter account, and we'll put the open house on there as well.
So get on Facebook, search Division of Water.
It'll be KY Risk Map.
KY Risk Map on Facebook.
Yes,
and I would hope if the insurance carriers or the local agencies have an association, that they can have somebody representing them at this hearing.
That would be great.
You understand what I'm talking about?
Oh, yeah.
Somebody representing all the insurance agencies, if they have an Eastern Kentucky Association or whatever.
Yeah.
I think they ought to attend this meeting also.
Yeah.
I mean, the list also, I want to go ahead and mention.
Because they're going to be the ones that have to provide the policy.
Right.
The list of these areas will be on Judge's Facebook page too, and I'll share them back and forth. That way anybody gets on Judge's can just automatically
link onto yours.
Well, and it's good for us to connect with the insurance agencies as well, because we can provide information to them to properly rate the flood insurance. Rating a flood insurance policy isn't necessarily an easy thing to do. I certainly don't envy the flood insurance agents or the insurance agents out there that do that.
We have some that's got pretty good over the years.
Absolutely, I have no doubt about that.
And we're sad that they have that experience. But you all have to be involved
we can provide
in that
them
rate.
Some good information, I think, to help there.
It gives everybody a fair rate. There's no doubt about that, because they have the data.
Right.
Well, let's reiterate why we're here. Remapping goes in effect April of 2013.
April 16th of 2013.
So people need to get their flood insurance now. December 18th, an open house meeting, fiscal courtroom.
Right.
5 p.m.
That's correct.
You'll be there.
I'll be there.
A bunch of other people will be there.
I'll bring a whole team with me, and we will stay as long as folks want to stay and talk with us. We're prepared to stay as long as you need us.
Well, like I say, they can also call the judge 432-6247. You can get on Judge's Facebook page. If there's any part of this show that you missed, if you tuned in halfway through and you need to watch it, you probably do need to watch it. It's you can get it on piketv.com. It should be, I don't know when it'll be on there. It should be on there soon enough to get on there, check it out. If you're just tuning in and you want to watch it in its entirety, piketv.com.
Great. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
All right, we appreciate you coming up.
Thank you very much.
On behalf of Judge Rutherford and Kerry Johnson, I'm Brandon Roberts. Thanks for watching the Pike County Report.